Hello, my name's Christopher Donald, and thank you for joining me on my channel. I'm going to be doing a demo on marbling clay. It's a slip decorating technique, and so opposed to uh, the other video that I have out, which is how to uh, laminate clay, how to marbleize the solid clay. This is going to show you how to do it with a liquid clay slip. And this is a decorating technique. This is a really old decorating technique. We've seen marbled clay back a 1,000+ years. And I did quite a bit of historical reproduction work. That's when I was interning doing that. That's when I learned how to do these techniques. And so the style that this is done in is more based on 17 to 1900s early American and English ceramic work. Anyhow, so to start off, you want to make sure that you've rolled out your slab correctly. I have a video on how to roll out slabs. The most important thing is that you're wedging the clay ram's head and you're compressing it on end, and that way you're going to get a much more sturdy and stable slab. And you're going to be putting this through a lot of forces, kind of different forces, by doing this process. You're adding a lot of water back into the slab, which has a tendency to kind of almost uncompress it. So you want to start off well before you do this to kind of make sure that you're not going to have any big issues. First thing that I like to do after I've rolled it out is compress it with a rubber rib. And then once I've got this compressed down, you're going to want to take a piece of plastic and you're going to want to get this on your clay. And this is partly to make it easier to clean things up. It's also to make it so that you can move the piece around when it's wet. If you don't put this plastic on here, it's very difficult to actually be able to move these things around at all. So you're going to have a liquid surface on here. So, and you want to trim the plastic to within about 3/4 of an inch of the edge of your slab. And this is one of those steps that I think my students see as being like this is just Chris being fussy kind of a thing, and it's incredibly critical. If you leave these floppy bits of plastic on here, then invariably after you've put your beautiful liquid decoration on here, you're going to go to walk across the room with it, and that plastic is going to flip up onto the liquid decoration, or the wind blows through, or somebody walks past it. Basically, it's okay if this plastic curls up a little, but only to the very edge of your slab, and you don't want it to be able to go past that. All right, so I got the backside ribbed smooth before I put this plastic on it, and now I'm going to take the canvas texture off of this side. I find that it does make a bit of a difference to have a smooth surface for your decorating. Not as much with the marbling as with the feather combing, but I'm kind of in the habit of just doing it at this point. I also like that it's compressing it from both sides, which I think is a valuable benefit. You want your bat to at least be the size of your slab. This one is right there. A little bit bigger might be nice, but you want your slabs to be larger than the finished product that you need. So I'm assuming 1 inch of this is going to get trimmed off. Part of that is because my fingers have to be somewhere in order to hold this, and so I'm going to mess up at least a 1/2 inch of that. The other thing that's going to happen is that when you go to shape this, it's generally best to trim off about a 1/2 inch around the circumference. That's where the clay is the driest, And if I just cut it off, then it's going to be a lot easier to shape this into a bowl or a plate or something else later. Okay, so I've got my surface ready, and I think I'm going to go ahead and put another thing down underneath this just to make my life easier as far as cleaning. There you go. One of those things you always swear this will be the time I do this where I don't splatter liquid clay all over the place. And it will not be the time that that happens. It will be just like every other time, and I'm going to splatter liquid clay all over the place. I can wash this canvas fine, but it probably needs to get washed at this point anyway, but that's fine. All right, so I'm going to be using two different color clays. I'm going to be using a liquid white and a liquid red slip, essentially two natural clay body colors. And I'm going to be using these ear syringes, which are a flexible bulb, and it's got a flexible end. And these are the 2-ounce size. The 1 ounce is nice if you're doing small amounts of a color. Like for the contrasting color, the red, I could be using a 1 ounce. 3 ounce are nice if you have to do quite a bit of trailing. But for marbling especially, these 2 ounce are a good in between. And I find that the ones that have this rib in the middle hold up pretty good over time, like years. You can get these just on Amazon or wherever. Usually you can find them in like 3 packs at least. They're pretty inexpensive. I like using these kinds of things for slip trailing because if anyone ever borrows them from me and they're a little lazy about cleaning them out, if the tips get full of dried clay, you can just crush them or hit it with a hammer and just rinse them right back out. So they clean up really well. Where things with hard tips or metal tips, I have a lot more issues with trying to keep them clean and keeping those holes open. These holes are fairly large. It's good for slip. These aren't as good for glaze if you're doing like slip trailing with glaze, but you can also put other tips into these to make them a little bit smaller if you want. The one classic one that we used to use was quills from feathers, like turkey quills. Okay, so this one says light blue, but that's fine. I know this is going to be for my white one, and the other one says red-brown, so that's good. That's for my contrasting color. So the first thing that I want to do is put down, well, actually, let's talk about the slips a little bit first. The important thing with all these slip techniques is that your slips are at the same consistency. And over the years, I've gotten to a point where I can do this by eye pretty accurately, but they need to be exact. If they are not, then one color will kind of float underneath the other color. And you want them to just kind of float on top of each other perfectly. When I did this in production, we used hydrometers, which is an extremely accurate way of judging the viscosity. And that's what I would recommend as far as if you were trying to do this in volume. Also, if you're trying to do this in volume, you want to do a lot of it at one time. Getting the slips perfect is actually like 90% of the battle. So when we did this, it generally was we got all of our slips ready, and then we did it for an 8-hour day. We just did slip decorating, and just because if they're humming along, if it's right, if everything's perfect, then you really just want to kind of go for it. So anyhow, okay, a little bit of a pro tip there for my budding production potters in the audience. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put down a base of one clay, of one color. And that can be a light color or a dark color. I do not recommend doing a base of black. There's so many oxides in black slip that you're going to have issues with basically the clear glaze even wanting to flux, to melt on it. It can be kind of challenging. For this specific decoration is not the end of the world, but it's also not fantastic. This is actually fairly lumpy, and I kind of grabbed this from a general studio that I work in. Preferably, you don't want lumps like this. I'm actually going to take a quick time out, and I think I'm going to try and get rid of these real quick, because that's going to be an issue for me. For marbling, they're not that big of a deal. You can kind of muscle past lumps, but for slip trailing, that would be game over. So let me show you, and this is actually kind of a nice thing to know anyway. You can just take the slip right off of this. Just use my rubber rib like a squeegee, and I'll just throw it back into the bucket, and I'm going to grab some of this and just push it through a sieve real quick to make sure that my initial amount here is in better shape than this. And this doesn't cause any problems with your decorating. So if you actually were to do a design on here and not like it, I will generally just squeegee it into the trash can or down the sink, and then just put another base down. Again, it just doesn't make any difference at all. So let me step away for a sec. I'm going to sieve a little bowl of this, and then we'll do it again without lumps. All right, and this isn't glaze. When you're sieving a slip, you can use a pretty coarse screen, frankly. I'm just using like a kitchen strainer, and that's fine. So let's go ahead and put down another base here. All right, that's looking better. There we go. That's what you get using materials from a group studio. Stuff just doesn't get maintained quite the same way as when you're trying to make money at it. There we are. Okay. Now, notice I didn't shake it really hard. I want that to just flow and be a nice thickness. You really want something that the other color can float in. That's important. All right. Now I've got my red-brown color. We'll see how lumpy this one is. And I try actually with my videos to leave some of these things in it. I don't like to edit these kinds of things out of my videos. I feel like you guys are going to run into stuff, and it's important that you see me fixing it. You know what I'm doing if I run into some kind of an issue. It really shouldn't be like like a tech tutorial where they're like, nothing bad ever happens and it always works perfect. It's like everyone knows that's not true. All right, so I've got my floating layer here, and then I'm going to put a couple of thicker spots of the exact same background color. And those are what's going to move. So those are the thing that's going to actually travel and give me the decoration. And then I can just take and trail lines that hopefully they'll intersect those blobs as well. And you don't need a lot of it. So you can see, I mean, this isn't like a ton of the dark color added. And then I'm going to get those blobs to start moving. And I apologize, I have to turn it to face me at different points here so that I can keep it rotating. But the more you get those blobs to move, then the thinner the lines are going to become as it drags them through the slip. And there'll be a point where they will start to want to mix a little, and that's usually kind of when you're done. And there we go. So it's, if the slip, this slip is a nice, like on the watery side of being appropriate for this decoration. And when it's a little bit more watery, I don't have to shake it very hard. I don't have to like be really abrupt with my motions. It wants to flow pretty nicely and neatly. If it's a little on the thicker side of okay, then you might need to give it a bit more of a shake. It's possible to do this decoration, to do marbling inside or even outside of a finished piece of something which is at late leather hard, or mid to late leather hard. And maybe I can do another, I don't actually have a piece ready, but I'll do another video at some point on how you do these decorations, or this decoration at least, inside of something and outside of something you've already made. You see a lot of that in like kind of traditional folksy French uh, pottery, especially turn of the century pottery. Um, so anyhow, that's marbling, liquid marbling. And for follow up, um, and again, I'm going to do a video on how you actually shape with this. So look for that one as a separate video. But this surface is a liquid. You cannot do anything with it at this point. So what you want to do is you want to let this dry slowly. Often when I make a lot of them, I take little blocks of wood, and these are all on boards or bats, and I just stack them up. And then I put a tent over it of plastic just to let them dry slow. But I'll probably leave this out all day, overnight, partially the next day. And at that point, it will finally be starting to not be liquid. Once this surface is at the same consistency as the clay it's on top of, once it's basically just workable clay again, and it's not tacky or squishy, I can take a piece of newspaper and put that over it, use that almost as blotting paper, and I'm going to use a rolling pin, and I'm going to make sure that there's no damp spots on the surface and roll it once or twice. That also is going to kind of warm it up a little bit. I can peel the plastic off of it, trim the edge a little, at least a half an inch, and then I can shape it over a mold or inside a mold, or I could cut it and use it for hand building. And it's just workable clay at that point. So anyhow, thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you back here again soon. If you've enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to be notified of new content as it drops. As I said, I will be having a couple other videos in this vein. I'm going to eventually be doing some slip trailing where you do feather combing, mocha wear, other different ones that are interesting. So take care. Bye.